Hi, this is Marshall Jones, and I'm very definitely going to give you a brief and sketchy overview of the internet. I'm going to gloss over a whole lot of history in an effort to try and give you an idea of where the internet has been. The internet's been with us for a long time. Work on it began in the late 1950s when the United States was interested in creating a decentralized network. This was the heart of the Cold War, and there was a desire to create a network that could withstand disruption, so that if one node in the network went down, communication could continue between nodes that still existed. What was developed was what was called packet switching technology. And packet switching technology to this day remains the heart of the internet. What packet switching means is that information may start here and end up over here, but it may take a rather circuitous route. It may go through this server, or this server, or this server to get to the end. Now, the great thing about packet switching technology is that if one part of the server went down, then the data would continue on through a different server. It would automatically, if you will, reroute itself. Let's look at a much better animation of that. This animation will show you what packet switching can look like. We're moving from host 1, that's the sender, in the upper left-hand corner, to host 2, that's the receiver, in the bottom right-hand corner. We have data represented in a green, red, and blue blocks, and those blocks can represent packets. So those packets are being moved from one node to another. The advantage of packet switching technology is that if one of these nodes goes down, then that packet just gets rerouted to the next available one. There's information written inside of this inside of the data that says what order it should be in, so that when it gets to host 2, it gets reassembled in the proper order. The internet has been used since the 1970s, but in the 1970s and 1980s, to access the internet, you probably had to be on a college campus or work within a research facility with the government, because those were the only people that could afford to have these gigantic computers that were connected to this network. Most people had no idea this network even existed. And to navigate that network, you really needed to use a command-line interface, much like you see here, so that you would have to know what commands to use and type those commands so that you could access different parts of the internet. In the early 1990s, we got one of the very first point-and-click interfaces for the internet. It was called Mosaic, and for the first time ever, you could use your mouse to click on blue text, which were hyperlinks. This revolutionized the internet, because now, through a web browser, you could access the internet and you could click on things to move from one part of the internet to another part of the internet. Early internet applications are often referred to as Web 1.0. They were largely passive. You could read, you could look, you could see pictures. There really wasn't a lot of video in the early internet or Web 1.0. Web 2.0 is a term that is used to describe a change in how we interact with the internet. In Web 1.0, it was largely passive. You were reading text and looking at pictures. In Web 2.0, you began to interact with the internet. You began to be able to tag things. You began to be able to click and move through things and to interact with data on the internet. If you think about many of the social media applications that you use today, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, these would be considered Web 2.0 applications because they allow us to interact with data. The internet that we know and love today consists of URLs for web pages. And you can actually read a URL. In this diagram, you can see that the file name exists on the left. As we move in, we have the directory name. A directory is a folder, just like on your computer. Anytime you see a / on a URL, that means that you have a folder. So sometimes you'll have multiple folders or folders inside of folders, nesting folders, if you will. This is the domain. This is the main domain of the internet address, so this is the National Institutes of Health.gov. You've seen other domains clearly, cnn.com, winthrop.edu. These are domain names. You can buy a domain name. Technically, you rent a domain name because you typically pay an annual fee for your domain name. And many individuals will do this as a way to protect their personal brand. You have probably seen problems with domains in the United States when political candidates buy domain names, but they will buy them for .com and .net, but perhaps forget to buy it on .biz or in some other domain. Domain names ending in .edu and .gov are typically restricted to education and government entities. A quick internet search on domain registration is going to provide you with a number of different places where you can register your domain name. You can pay a fee for as little as $10 a year or so as of recording this video to register a domain name. Typically you have to renew that registration annually. Once you have a domain name, you can direct whatever website building tool you're using, be it Google Sites or Weebly or Wix or anything else, so that when somebody types in that domain name, it actually accesses your internet on another site. Put another way, the domain name is a shortcut to the more complicated internet address. There's more, of course, but I told you this was going to be a brief and sketchy overview, and so we're going to leave it there.